CRUSHERCAST. What's up, family? This is Joe B. from CRUSHERCAST, the very first episode of Topicast, wherein we are going to, on the regular, once a month, middle of the month, we're going to get together. I'm going to assemble my Legion of Doom here, and we'll bring some people in from different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, different careers, and we're going to pick one topic and we're going to talk about it. And yeah, we'll just see where this goes. This will be the first one, so it might be a train wreck, but I ain't scared if you ain't. So, like I said, tonight's topic is fear. I'm just going to start with the definition, so we're all kind of on the same, we're leveling the playing field here. Webster's calls fear an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. Alternatives are anxious concern, profound reverence and awe, especially toward God, or reason for alarm. Some synonyms for this word: fear, dread, fright, alarm, panic, terror, trepidation. Some of the origins of the word fear, let's see, from the Old English, fair, calamity, sudden danger, peril, sudden attack. Proto-Germanic, whatever the heck that is, faraz, which means danger. Source also of Old Saxon far, ambush. Let's see. State of being afraid, uneasiness caused by possible danger. And that was developed in the late 12th century. We started somewhere along the line associating it with this reverence for God, fear equaling this reverence for God. And it's from the sources I have looked into, they said that, like the phrase, to put the fear of God into someone, intimidate, cause to cower. That came around the late 1800s. So fear has kind of had a bunch of different tag words or names or whatever you want to call them. But fear has been a part of us for all time. It's a part of us. Some people believe that it's one of our God-given instincts is fear, to be afraid. Like if the caveman wasn't afraid, we wouldn't be here because he would have gotten eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So some fear is healthy. So anyway, I've rambled enough here in the beginning. I want to introduce my guests. I've got Sheila Reed, Liz Drew, and James Wade joining me. Like for you to go around, you guys just introduce yourselves and kind of tell who you are, what you're up to, and I'll give you guys time at the end for some shameless plugs and stuff like that. But James, how about you? You want to start for us?
Sure. My name is James Wade. I'm the Director of Mental Health Programming in 12 facilities across the state of Missouri. I'm also a mental health consultant, and I am provisionally licensed as a professional counselor. I work a lot with, clients, of course, residents as we call them, and also with staff and administration on how to provide the best possible mental health programming that we can to assist folks to get back on their feet and reintegrate back into the community. And so this is a great topic because we work with a lot of fear, and I have a history of fear myself, so I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Right on. Aren't you part of a podcast too, I think?
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. I am part of a podcast as well. I'm the co-host of the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. And of course, you can find that on the Cerebral Entertainment Network. That's on all your podcast streamers that are out there in the interwebs. So yeah, be sure to look that up. We have a good time.
Cool. Thanks, James. What about you, Sheila?
Yeah. Hey, my name is Sheila, and I am I'm actually a social worker. I'm licensed in social work and an energy worker and guide. And I have been doing social work in the child welfare system for about over 20 years in Illinois. And so seen my share of this and that as well. And over approximately about the last 5 years, I've gotten way more into my own personal stuff with using energy healing and guidance and coaching to help people and to do a bit of that on the side for myself, not just for myself, but for others as well. So using a lot of the same stuff to work there.
Cool. Well, thank you. What about you, Liz?
My name is Liz Drew, and I own a gym in Troy, Missouri. Retired horse trainer and retired boxer. So I've spent a good portion of my life dealing with the physiological response to fear and how to overcome it. And currently, I'm in a recovery program and hopefully am helping some other people along the way. And just really glad to be here and glad to meet you guys.
Thanks, Liz. Well,
I'm sorry. Did she say she was a retired boxer? Is that?
yes.
That's awesome. Okay, I just had to make sure. I didn't want to go any further without clarifying. That's awesome,
She's our resident badass, James.
I love it.
So that being said, I'm going to kind of start with you, Liz. I know the whole world is dealing with this COVID thing right now, and I know you had to shut the gym down a little bit, and I know that had to be some fear associated with that. I mean, that's your livelihood, and that's what you've known for so long. And can you talk about that a little bit?
I was terrified. I remember calling a friend, I think on March 20th. I closed on March 18th and just put the padlock on the door and dissolved into tears, and not a crier, but not knowing what was going to happen if I was financially going to be able to keep the gym open. And I feel like I get paid, obviously, but I feel like I'm providing a service as well. My gym provides a service. I'm kind of a bartender. All of my members come in and have things that they want to talk about. And so I really didn't know. And I kind of, on the 20th, I let it grip me. And I'm sitting here in the house by myself, just what am I going to do? And then I started meditating a lot. I started reading a lot. And I decided that, first of all, I couldn't not decide that I wanted to do it. That was what fear was telling me. It's just say, you don't really care and whatever happens is going to happen. That's a cop-out. So I first had to say, I want to reopen the gym. And then I had to take all the steps necessary, the PPP loan, the talking to my landlord who was merciful. And so that, and everything has worked out beautifully. Hopefully they don't shut me down again. But if they do, you know what? The first thing that I had to deal with was the fear of saying, I want this, because once I commit to wanting it, then I can lose. And that's what's terrifying, is failing. So that was all about fear of failure, but a lot of meditating and a lot of talking I have some really good friends and resources.
Yeah. Yeah. James, did you see it in your field? Was it present?
There has been a lot of fear in the mental health field for sure, especially working in facilities where we have a lot of residents who are closed up, and they already feel kind of isolated oftentimes from society. Mm-hmm. And so if you are watching the 24-hour news cycle at all, get ready, because you're going to be impacted by fear, because the news they don't make money by bringing good news to us most of the time, right? It's mostly, it's perpetuated by fear in one fashion or another. And then we've had to see some changes in the facilities, via, social distancing and wearing masks, and just all the different interventions put in place because of this COVID. And there has been a lot of fear, not just from the residents that we serve, but also the staff and management, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And we've been fortunate so far but there have been some facilities in the state of Missouri and across the country, of course, where the virus has gotten in, and once it has spread, and that in of itself has caused everyone more fear because no one wants to be that facility.
Yeah.
You get close to these folks, and to see people sick and suffering is obviously, there is utility in that fear, but it's also it's causing a lot of anxiety and it just the gamut of emotions, anger, frustration, you name it. And it's all based off of that initial fear that a lot of people have been dealing with. So yeah, it has been a part of our lives now for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the way you said the utility of it. I mean, how there's that line between, well, just like I said about the caveman and the saber tooth. I mean, there's a reasonable amount of fear that will serve us, you know what I mean, in the long run. Sheila, have you seen it in your field?
Oh, absolutely. Not just similar to what you said, James, and even Liz, with it's everybody that we come in contact with, and ourselves, especially with this particular situation. It's really from the energy perspective, I've seen it be something that has scratched down deep into some very, very deep fears. So on the surface, we're dealing with the COVID situation, and this is out here where we can see it and make plans about it if we can, once we grasp what it is. But the underlying parts of this particular fear is very deep, and it goes back not just individually, but for all of us as a group, as a collective. So this is really a time for a lot of healing and opportunity once we can work through the fear part. And so, but it's definitely been an eye opener. And agency wise, me seeing a large agency from a state perspective struggle is pretty scary, because I think a lot of people rely on government or agencies to take care of them. And then when they see that those same agencies are struggling themselves, with their employees are scared, the leadership is unsure, that just feeds all of it. And then we get the news that seems to just put the cherry on the top, right? So it's been everywhere.
Yeah, I personally, I've taken a sometimes unpopular approach to what's going on. Is I've turned the news off, and I walk away from conversations about it.
Yes.
I take whatever necessary means to protect myself and the ones I care about. But I believe that whatever I give energy to, whether that's a fear or whatever, is going to get bigger. And I've got dear friends who are just absolutely paralyzed with fear about this. I mean, their whole lives, and they walk out, and even when they leave their house, they're just paralyzed, and I personally don't want to live that way, so what, the way I handle it aside, Liz, do you think that there's a healthy way to handle the media hitting us, bombarding us, in those conversations? I mean, we can't just unfriend everybody in our life,
I do believe I limit myself during quarantine. I watched a certain program in the morning and then a little bit at night. And so I wasn't overwhelmed with it. I truly believe that it's your perspective. Yes, these are the scientific facts. Yes, this is reality. I have to accept reality. However, my perspective, the way I look at reality, how I allow it to influence me internally and externally in how I live my life, that is under my control. And to me, being a control freak, that's where the fear comes in of losing control, uncertainty. I absolutely hate it. However, when I realize that me fighting what is reality and me fighting what is uncertainty is only going to make me suffer more, then hopefully I wise up and do differently. Accept reality. However, also have the confidence that I can survive whatever it is put in front of me. And confidence comes from experience, and I have a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, James, I think, if I remember correctly, you practice some meditation and stuff like that, or have delved into that. I know for me, when I step out the door, it's almost like I got to put on my armor, but it's like an internal thing. I get my mind right. I do some meditation. I do some reading. I get right with me. And then when I step out into the world, it's a little easier to just let the stuff slide off my back. Whatever's going on around me, it's almost like I've got a little protective shell around me. Do you find that? Do you use meditation similarly, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think mindfulness practice helps me to really delve into the inner workings of me, right? Who I am. I have to, kind of quiet the mind so that I can really see what it is that I need to focus on. A thing about fear also is that it's so contagious. It's so contagious. You can see that in society, and you can see it in society at the macro level or in small groups. When someone is afraid, a lot of people pick up on that. And now that person, the other people around that person is experiencing that fear as well. And I try to be mindful that I don't want to be an influence of fear. I want to be an influence of calm and of strength. Not that fear, once again, doesn't have its utility. Should people be afraid of a virus or of economic collapse or things like that? I think there's still some usefulness and some benefit in having some fear based on the notion that, yes, this virus, if it doesn't affect me very negatively, it could affect someone else that I'm around. And so I try to be mindful of that, because I'm kind of an extremist, right? I'm all or nothing. I'm either really afraid of something, or I just, tend to throw caution to the wind. And mindfulness helps me to kind of balance myself. It helps me to really take some introspection and think about others by taking care of myself and letting that self project out to those people around me. And that's really how I'm using mindfulness right now, is really just to try to be the best projection that I can to other people.
Nice. And Sheila, I know you and I have talked a lot about the energies and about how we can impact, just not even saying a word, just being a certain way and thinking and feeling a certain way. Do you have some input on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just what all of you have spoken about is extremely important, and it starts with ourselves. Is the best place to start. If that's taking care of yourself before you walk out the door, because that you're going to be triggered by something, then by all means make sure that you do that. Sometimes people aren't as prepared. You think you're starting out on a good foot, and you get out there, and all of a sudden you're in a mass crowd of people that feels really awful. And so we have to be practicing ways to be prepared for the chaos of what that feels like. And the more we can be able to bring ourselves into center and ground and just kind of be still, even in the midst of that, then we will be better off in dealing with the fears that come up like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. I do the meditation things. This actually presented an opportunity that I've been doing meditation groups in person. And with this, we had to stop doing that in person. And I thought, oh, what are we going to do? And we ended up actually doing things on Skype by meditation, and doing these things has actually been absolutely beautiful. And more people have been able to come, because there's a lot of people afraid to even come out before COVID, and they didn't, or they were doing the chronically late or other better opportunities, whatever, were presenting themselves, and they thought they were going to make it, but they didn't. Right. And so, interestingly, a real regular following of meditation every week, and people having a chance to do that has really kind of forced us to pay attention to these things individually, and then look around and say, do I really want to engage in this? Do I really want to go to this particular store? Or would I rather go to that particular store, or have someone else get my groceries or order them, or what have you? Just being mindful of what we're trying to work with is really the hardest part, or the first part. But going that route has been a lifesaver to have had that experience before this happened. So it has been, it hasn't been as, I think, detrimental personally in that respect. But the hard part is having the sensitivity of watching it happen to other people, and to feel what that feels like to everyone else around me is very difficult. And I've had to do I haven't really watched much TV for probably 5 years. And so, so I really I pick and choose what I engage in, what I watch for a reason. So the news was already off my radar. So I already knew better, because I thought, oh, this is really going to go bad. So, but trying to help other people understand that and teach them how important it is for them they do have a choice. You don't have to have your TV on all day. Yeah. Just because you've always done that, you can turn that off. Okay. And that's been a huge one, I would say, for sure. For most people, once they've shut that off, even my mom has done this thing where, I don't understand why I'm so anxious. And she lives in the middle of the woods, like in the country. And I went, your TV's on all day and it's just news about all this catastrophe. How about if you shut it off and it's just running in the background? So just turn it off. And she, a few days later, goes, this is great. I feel really good. I went, that's great. Yeah.
And Joe, if I could jump in really quickly, one more thing about mindfulness that really occurs to me is that practicing mindfulness while you're taking good care of yourself, and I'm talking about everything from washing your hands to eating good food, when you really become present in the moment, you realize just how much better you feel in the first place. And we need to, I hope that one thing this coronavirus does for everyone is teaches everyone to take better care of themselves in the absence of any pandemic threat. You know, let's just, support our immune system with good, nutrition and exercise and washing. I'm a rabid hand washer anyway. I always have been. I'm just short of a germaphobe. I'm not quite there, but I always like to have clean hands, right? But one of the first times I remember being mindful outside of actually meditating practice is washing my hands. And I just remember how the water felt and how clean my hands were becoming. And just doing that, I think it enhances your life in general, especially in each present moment that's all we have. But being mindful just really enhances every avenue that you take in order to be a healthier person. And to me, it boosts everything for me. And so I also really like being mindful of taking care of myself. And I would like for more people to really grasp onto that concept, because it does wonders for me.
Yeah. I use the analogy a lot, especially in dealing with this and without touching on the political part of it, but like everything going on with the Black Lives Matter and all this chaos that's going on with that. But the analogy of the baseball player, and when the game starts slowing down for them, when I meditate, and I purposely start all my meditations, which are usually like a long hike, an intense hike, I start them with some really insane, like suicidal tendencies or some black flags, some crazy heavy music. And it sounds odd to people that I can meditate through that. But there's a point to where it becomes noise. It becomes background noise. And I'm able to find my spot within it. And then I can come out into the real world. And one thing I'm really trying to practice is letting people be where they're at. Even if they're afraid, if they want help, I can help them, but it's not my job to save them or make them unafraid. Maybe their fear is what's going to teach them how to get rid of their fear, And so when I do my work, like you said, take care of myself in all other respects, I can walk out into the world and the game slows down for me. I can function at a very high level, very efficiently through and navigate situations that people go, damn, dude, how'd you get through that without losing your mind? Now I have to preface that by saying, watch me untangle some Christmas lights and you'll see what pure fury looks like. But I mean, I can navigate things, and I owe it all to just putting the time in ahead of time and getting right with me. And then I can walk out in the world, I got a couple quotes here. One of which it hit me when I read this, and it's by Andre Gide, an author and Nobel Prize winner. He says, there are very few monsters who warrant the fear we have of them. That one hit me kind of heavy, and it I've heard it said other ways. 85% of what you're afraid of never happens anyways. I've heard that one said. Another one, Mahatma Gandhi said, the enemy is fear. We think it is hate, but it is fear. He has another one that was really cool. There would be nothing to frighten you if you refuse to be afraid. And the reason I love that one is because of just what I just said. I make sure I put in the work ahead of time. And like I said, the game slows down to me, and I just refuse to be afraid in those situations, and it's not even like I'm fighting the fear. It's just I'm placed in a place of neutrality, and I just move through whatever I need to move through, and it's not a right or wrong, scared or not scared thing. I was talking to the ladies before we got started. I had an amazing I've known for months that we were going to do this topic cast, and it was going to be on fear. And I'm like, it got to the last few days, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to start it? I know these people I'm having on are intelligent, witty, they got lots to say, and they're really fountains of information. But how am I going to get the conversation started? How is it going to start? So I was a little afraid of how to start, but I left it to the universe, and the universe is perfect. So I'm at my grandson's baseball game last night, and he told me a few weekends ago at a barbecue, we were playing wiffle ball, and he goes, Papa, I can't hit the ball. I can catch and I can throw really good, but I can't hit at all. And I'm like, well, just relax. Just get in there and relax. And he started having fun playing wiffle ball, and he was crushing the ball. Well, last night we're at the game, and there's relatives and people yelling, go get him, buddy. You got this, do this, just stay in there. And everybody had advice for him as he's walking up. And I can just see the color draining out of his face as he's walking up to home plate. And he gets up there and he strikes out. And which isn't, he struck out last week too, but this week something hit him. And when he got done striking out, it's going to get me. He started walking back to the dugout, and he ducked his head and held his over his eyes and started crying. And he was crushed. And he wasn't crushed because he struck out. He was crushed because he felt like he let everybody down, is what it was. And so he come back in, and everybody gave him words of encouragement and loved on him and everything. Couple innings go by. Game's going good. His team loads the bases up, and guess who's up? He has to go up there with bases loaded, 2 outs. And he's sitting on the bench, and his mom gave him complete option. She was so sweet. She said, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to do this. And he looked up and he said, I'm going to do it. And he got up there and he went, and he struck out again. But he walked back to the dugout with his head up, and he fought through it. And I was like, man, I remember being that scared as a child. And I remember different instances. I've got some amusement park fears that happened to me as a child, and I will not ride amusement park rides to this day, But watching him go through that, he could have very easily said, no, Mama, I'm done, and just been scared. And he wasn't, and there's times I wish I had that, So, and he's not going to quit. He's got a game Thursday. He's going to go back and play again, And so, Liz, since we're on the topic of sports, in your boxing career, how much of a hurdle was that? Were there instances where you were, I don't know, maybe afraid of an opponent, or just afraid in general to compete, or afraid that you weren't good enough, or anything like that? Was there that present?
All of it, all of the above. I think back to the caveman reference, we're supposed to be afraid of somebody hitting us in the face, but yet I let them pay me to do it, right? So from my perspective, I've been my second opponent ever. Trisha Hill, we fought at the Roxy in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was so desperate for opponents. Of course, I should have been having tune-up fights, real like local girls, but they didn't exist. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the fight. So the phone call I get a week before, well, Liz, she breathes and she bleeds, but that, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I took one look at her in the weigh-ins and I lost the fight. I lost the fight the day before at the weigh-ins because she had the classic square jaw. We won't get into the whole steroid story. But, you know, I had taken the fight. And so then the next level of fear comes is, okay, I think my defense is pretty good. I don't think she's going to kill me. Well, she hit like a Mack truck. So after you get hit by somebody the first time, then you kind of do your evaluation and you say, well, you know, I have a choice. I can either take a couple good shots and they're going to stop the fight and I can go home, but be ashamed. In Liz's world, feeling shame is more terrifying than getting the shit kicked out of me. Okay, so I fought, and it was actually a split decision, and it ended up being a good fight. But there was that moment. I remember very clearly that moment, and it taught me so much for the whole rest of my career. First of all, it doesn't matter who you're across from, you have to fight. That's what you're here to do. It doesn't matter who you're fighting, okay? So that was one thing. And the second part of it was just, what are you going to do? Are you going to do your best? And whatever your best is, you're not going to let anybody beat you. You're not going to lose. You're just going to have to get beat. So in other words, if I'm going to lose a fight, you beat me. I put my 100% into it. And again, the fear of failure, like your grandson, that's a nightmare, or your nephew, sorry. Fear of failure is huge. And I can remember after fights, you know, crying myself to sleep with a bottle of tequila because you feel like you let everybody down. It's a horrible, horrible feeling. But the first thing that I had to realize was I have a choice. I'm either going to do my absolute best to be better and to beat them, or I'm going to be ashamed of myself. I was never ashamed of my performance. I was feeling bad that I let people down, but I was never ashamed of a performance.
That's an awesome story. There's a book, I'm sure some of you guys have read it, Who Moved My Cheese? I can't remember who the author is. We had to read it for lean manufacturing certification at a plant I worked in. And only thing I can remember from it is one line. And this one mouse looks at the other mouse and says, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" And I use that all the time now. And it's a hard question to answer. It's an easy question to answer, but a hard question to follow with action, you know? Like you said, I love the way you said that, Liz, that I lost the fight the day before. You know, I can look back on my life, so many different instances where I lost the fight the day before. And it was because I was so afraid of looking bad or not looking good, or just being embarrassed or ashamed. You know, one of my carnival stories, when I was a small child, my mom and dad took me to a carnival, and my mom got me in a car next to her. I was a little bitty thing, and I was tucked up underneath her arm, and we went riding through this little car through the fun house, and it scared the bejesus out of me so bad that I tucked my head up underneath my mom's arm, scared to death. And then I can just remember those doors opening, and we dumped out into the carnival fairway there, and everybody, it probably wasn't everybody, but in my mind, it was just like in a movie where it's all distorted and everybody's going, ha, 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 you know, and I'm going, oh no, you know, I'm so, you know, and it was, I was scared because of that. But then afterwards, that added a little nugget to, I'm afraid of carnival rides now. You know, then I had a bad experience on a carnival ride, which actually made things worse. So now I won't ride on them. So maybe I'll get over that someday. But in everyday life, say like Sheila, when you're dealing with families and stuff like that, do you see a lot of that where it's almost a give up situation, where somebody gives up and you can see that they're just giving up because they're scared of the outcome? Do you see that?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, and be it parents, that feel that way, be it the kids, be it my own employees, quite frankly, you know, and myself. I mean, you guys, that's, I mean, absolutely the truth. The choice is what makes the difference. The thing is that if we're already kind of down and not taking care of ourselves, kind of like we've all been saying, if we're not taking care of ourselves to kind of stay in the zone, then we're going to fall down enough to where those times get us. And being able to make the choice to not stay in the fear and to actually be able to choose something else, or to look at it from a slightly different perspective, can be enough to kind of help us up a little bit. Vibrationally, from an energetic perspective, you know, shame, fear, guilt, those kinds of things are the very, very bottom of our energetic resonance. So those are the lowest places that we can be, and that dumps us off into depressions and anxieties and other things that result from that. So absolutely, you can see it on somebody's face, and we know what it feels like because we have these experiences ourselves. But like what you described, Liz, you just know that you just quit ahead, and it's already over. And so then it's just a matter of, what is this going to end up looking like really? And then we grasp at the our head and our ego pops in to try to protect us and say, oh my God, I better try to come up with some way to save face or not look, you know, this way, or maybe I'm going to just change my perspective enough to not feel as bad. Mm-hmm. But it really boils down to the choice. But yes, you can see that on somebody's face when they've quit.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the guys that I mentor and stuff like that, we have a ongoing conversation. That's when we talk on the phone, we talk regularly. And one of the first questions I ask him is, what are you afraid of today? And a lot of times it starts with, well, I don't know. You know, I don't know. But then they'll go on and tell me about where they got angry, or where they were sad, or where they were something else. And just my studies that I have found is that everything negative can be traced back to a fear. It's either I'm afraid I'm not going to get something I want, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose something I already have. And fear, it's not okay to show fear. You know, we've already discussed that. You know, it's especially us guys, James. You know, my old man, if I came home and told my old man I was afraid of the kid up the street, I was going to be up standing toe to toe with the kid up the street when my dad's standing behind me, you know? So the way I work with my guys, and we talk about how fear is like a whack-a-mole. You know, when I suppress fear, it's going to pop up as an anger or a jealousy or something. It's going to come somewhere else. And it's going to look nothing like what fear looks like, but it's going to pop up in another area. James, working in mental health field, like as you do, I know fear is prevalent all over in that, but do you see cases where you personally can see that it's fear based, or that somebody has, like we talked with Sheila about, how somebody has almost just given up and said, this is who I am, I'm filling the gaps here, you know, but you can see that it's absolutely fear. Do you see that in your field?
Absolutely. And one of the best tools in this field, as a person in general, is by using empathy, you know. And so I try to personalize as much of another person's experience as I can, so that I can connect with that person and find the best way to help. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the fear, I mean, you can run the gamut of different things that cause the fear, and a lot of fear of failure. Fear of failure in relationships I can relate to, because I had a fear of failing in a relationship. I kept myself out of probably a lot of good things. I missed a lot of good opportunities in my life because of that fear. You know, fear has a contracting mechanism for a lot of people. It can be expansive too, in the way, if you're a boxer and you're afraid of that person in front of you, you decide that you're just going to go up and punch them in the face and make them beat you. That can be an expansive reaction to fear, but a lot of times fear it contracts us. Like if you're in the forest and there is a bear, what are you supposed to do? If he's trying to attack you, you're supposed to get down in the fetal position, make yourself as small as possible. That is, I know I'm going to run and take my chances of being quicker than the bear, but my fight or flight or freeze, I hope that I run in that case. But at any rate, that's what they say. But fear has that effect on us psychologically too. It causes us oftentimes to contract. And because I have a fear of failure, whether it's in a relationship or maybe a job, maybe I feel like I'm just going to blow this interview. And so I don't even try because of that fear causes me to lose out on a possible huge opportunity. And those are some obvious examples, but it happens in everyday life. It happens because one of our clients might have a fear of disappointing someone, or they might have a fear. I'm working with one in particular right now who has a great social anxiety, and that social anxiety is fed by and coupled with a fear of embarrassment. He's afraid that he's going to embarrass himself to such an extent that it cripples him. It causes him paralyzing anxiety in a social context. And it comes back to the fear that people around him are going to make fun of him, and he doesn't know how he's going to handle that. And it must be a crippling way to live life. Mm. And so he's contracted by that. He's made smaller by that. He's put in this little bitty shell, and he can't respond like maybe you or I would, which I have suffered also from some social anxiety in my past. I've worked on mitigating such things by taking a more expansive approach and facing my fears and things like that. But yeah, I see a lot of fear, and a lot of the fear is also trauma-based. You know, when there's a traumatic event in someone's life, then that trauma will cause that person to relive that circumstance time and time again. And so the fear that happened when the trauma first took place, whether it's abuse or an accident or war or what have you, the fear continues to visit that person. And it's just as real today as it was 5-10 years ago, however long it was that the actual event happened. And so we see a lot of fear based on trauma as well. And that's a tough one. It's a tough one to deal with because there's a lot of unraveling of a person's, their psyche and their experience that we have to try and mitigate through the long process.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as the trauma that you spoke of, it brings me to phobias. Webster says phobia is an extreme irrational fear of or aversion to something specific to an item or activity, and usually related to a trauma. When you said trauma, that's what made me look to that. I can't remember if I read this somewhere or I heard it in a lecture, but they were trying to describe the physiological effects of fear/stress on the body. And they used the roller coaster versus the car accident. So a roller coaster, like if you put me on a roller coaster, it's going to be completely fear-based stress, okay? I have friends who absolutely love roller coasters, but it scares the shit out of them while they're on them, and that's what they love. And from what this lecturer or this author, the point he was trying to get across was that physiologically, and maybe Sheila, you can touch on the energy parts of it, our body doesn't know the difference between happy stress and danger stress. It still has the same effects. The heart rate still does the same. The hormone dumps still the same way. Still hits the body the same. Is that true of the energies too, Sheila?
The energy part's based a little more on the level of truth in terms of your own inner truth. So, so while there can be a physiological reaction that's the same, it doesn't necessarily mean that the energetic component of that's the same. So, I'm trying to think, there's been some really good examples in terms of fear-based and connection to our egos being a protection for us, being afraid of the bear. But yet, at the same token, if you've never experienced a traumatic event with a bear, but yet you still have this phobia of bears, there's no like logical connection there. And so, so you go on into this, it's a mental feeding of that fear. Mm-hmm. But it's like this cycle that you're stuck in, and it's almost like a skipping record or something where you can't quite come off of that. Mm-hmm. And it takes, like James said, it's a lot of unraveling to get down to and deal with what is at the core of what that is. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned, Joe, the fear can materialize and look like something else than what it really is being afraid of. Mm-hmm. Similar to you're having a fight with your significant other over the coffee, but in reality, you're still pissed from 2 days ago, about something completely different. Yeah. So those things pop up differently, but it takes some exploring to figure it out. But, that part it basically from the energetic component is a bit different in terms of the, where it's truly coming from. Mm-hmm. Is what, I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, yeah, but. Absolutely. I found it odd that in Webster's dictionary, Webster or whoever did it, Merriam-Webster or whoever, included in there profound reverence and awe, especially towards God. God with a little g, whatever God that may be for you, So that made me do a little research into that part of it. I have some context on the subject. I have family that are ministers and grew up around a religion as a lot of us have. And I'm not trying to get too far into the God talk, but I know I always had problem growing up with that. If I'm living correctly, I'm afraid of God. And that's a big statement for me. And that's always been a stumbling block for me. So I found a few quotes, and I talked to a friend of a different faith, but this is, I'll start with out of the Bible, without getting too Bible-y. In Exodus 1:17 says, Pharaoh brought disaster on his nation because he did not fear God. Old Testament stuff, but then in the New Testament, Matthew 10:28 says, and Paul says to work towards complete holiness, we fear God. And I don't know if it's in translation, the word fear there throws me, that they use it in that context. But I asked a friend of mine who's actually Hindu, how it's present in there, because I had heard that they also, use the fear of God. And to loosely quote him, he said, we Hindus fear our gods because our gods are very strict and true like our parents. And he gave me a Hindu saying that one of his relatives uses. It says, a man who wants to live in the path of Dharma should either have bhakti, which is devotion, or bhayam, which is fear towards God. Anyone with either devotion to God or fear of God will lead him to live in a righteous way. I still don't grasp that completely, because that's not how it's present for me. James, are you spiritually inclined? Do you have any input on the fear of God?
Well, I also grew up in religious family, and the fear of God in that sense is, to me, in the way that I was taught is just, it's a reverence that's higher than any other reverence that you could give anything else. Basically, you revere it, you revere him, however you want to look at it, so much that it is parallel to fear. And I think, that's why the translation ended up being fear, because there was maybe no other way to put how much you should reverence, that higher being.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you want to get out of the context of just the Christian Judeo sense of it,
absolutely.
just talking even about the universe, to revere the universe, like your Hindu friend, either your friend said, or it was another quote, I forget, but just the fact that that God is he's strict, right? He or she or it, whatever, is strict. And the universe is strict, right? Try to change the weather. Try to shrink a mountain, try to move a mountain by your bare hands. Try to keep the sun from rising tomorrow. These things are going to happen whether or not I want them to or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's apparent to me that I can either reverence it, or I can continue to fight against something that I have no power, no control over. And to me, that's kind of what that's leading to. And I think just to make sure we broaden the context for anyone, any religion or practice or spiritual, bearing that you might have, I think that reverence, I think it means something for things that are greater than us.
Mm-hmm.
Because whether or not, I believe that even atheists, I think they have a good understanding that the universe is greater than what we are, even though we're a part of it, and we could get into that talk as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how all of you feel like that we are, what cog we are in the universe. But that being said, I can be a part of the universe, but I cannot overcome the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that causes me reverence when I look up at the stars at night, or when I look at a mountain peak, or when I look at the ocean, which I love the ocean. I revere the ocean. I have such a great reverence for it. And it causes me an inner peace that, I realize that it's more powerful than what I could ever be.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the God that you aspire to, the one that you look to, I think that you have to reverence it, or else you're fighting against something that you are going to, maybe you should fear, because you will ultimately lose. That's my interpretation of that,
Mm-hmm.
that translation of fear.
Send all emails to James Wade.
Right. No hate emails, please. If I said something wrong, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
I didn't mean to throw you under the bus like that. Liz, does fear play a role in any spiritual practices that you have, or is it present, or?
I don't think it does. I consider myself a kindergartner spiritually, but I can really relate this reverence. I love that word. All of my years training horses, you know how people say horses can smell fear? Well, they can. It's your physiological response. If you're telling me that a dog can sniff out cancer and diabetes, then yeah, a horse knows when you're scared. But every horse trainer worth his salt or her salt will tell you that they're scared. I am about to get on a 1,200-pound animal, and I did this for 20 years, that has never been ridden before, and I'm talking about the young ones. Okay, so this is complete raw material. We spend those years of experience training our bodies to lie. Okay, you can, with enough experience and enough good coaching and enough work, train your body that physiologically it does not show the fear response. I don't think if I hadn't had all those years training horses that I ever could have been a professional boxer, because I trained my body to lie and to function and to do what I told it, no matter what was going on internally. But I was still scared. And then the other part of that job was kind of tying in with the trauma that we were talking about. I had to teach women to ride horses, and I do 90% women, okay? And many of them had had a traumatic experience. So I was completely untrained, and I wish that they don't pay horse trainers and riding instructors enough to go get psychotherapy degrees, but I needed one. I mean, I was dealing with a lot of trauma and a lot of fear. And again, what James was saying about empathy, because I couldn't relate to their irrational fear or phobia of the horse. I definitely have a proper reverence for the horse because, yeah, it's greater than me. It could kill me. But so I'm kind of making a loop here, but I understand the physiological response and how that is innate. I mean, that's human nature, but it can be trained. And that's all I've got on that subject.
So something that came to mind in my meditation today when I was thinking about this was, I don't know if this was a healthy fear or not, but I can remember my old man. And it only took a couple ass whoopings for me to have this thing ingrained back here that every time I was getting ready to do something I shouldn't do, I thought about what my old man was going to do. And I'll tell you, to this day, if he was still alive, I'd still be afraid of him. And he loved me. He loved me so much. He would never do anything to purposely hurt me. But if I messed up, I'd need to be afraid, be very afraid. And I grew up in a neighborhood where these days are gone, believe me, where if I got in trouble at the top of the street, I would get my butt whooped 5 times before I even got home by my friends' moms and everybody. You know, we were that tight. We were all that tight. And so that brought me to think about how people use fear in a negative way, but for their benefit. You know, we can call it bullying or whatever. I'm not on board with all the bullying love that's going around right now. You know, the anti-bullying stuff like that. I mean, some of this is just my take. You know, we had a bully when I was a kid. He rode our bus, and he had a glass eye, and he red hair and the meanest little son of a gun for 100 miles. And he would pull his glass eye out, and he would scare the little girls with it on the bus, and they would hide and cower, and it was just like that kid. Every time I watch Christmas Story, the redheaded kid that the bullies, I see him, and he got on the bus one day and he pulled that eye out and went down scaring everybody and punching people and doing his thing. And I'd had enough. But I was scared. I was scared beyond scared because this was the scariest dude around. And I just beat the snot out of him, just beat the living snot out of him. And I've hated bullies ever since then. So here I am back at this word bullies. And if you take that red, nothing against gingers, I'm just saying this stereotype of this small child bullying, you take that picture away. I can put that same mentality. I've had bosses that led that way. They led by fear. I've had coworkers who are that way. I've had friends. I've had bandmates. I've watched parents parent. My dad was one of them. Fear was a great tool for him, you know. And Sheila, I know you work with families. Do you see fear used in that context as a tool almost? I'll call it a tool.
Yeah, sure. And I think even from a broader perspective of what you're talking about, the thing is we've been taught to have the fear in those ways, and then it becomes a very easy mechanism to be controlled by, and it also becomes an easy mechanism to control others with it. So when we start talking family, parents, and their use of that fear, some of that is deep rooted from their own fears, obviously, of being concerned about what's going to happen to the welfare of my kid, be it concerned about the fact that they're a girl and they're going to be living in this particular environment, or they're of a certain culture and they're going to live in this environment and it feels very unsafe. So, there's some elements of that. And James, the word reverence with the fear component with God, for example, is exactly the same thing that it resonates with me on that component for sure. And I think about how we connect to people about that, and Liz, with your gym members, and trying to connect to how people are with being afraid to come and work out or to do something different out of the ordinary. But families and parents will do that because that's all they know, and that's what they think that is going to be the best way to do it. And it's a way to control. When you were talking a while ago about that kid on the bus, I have this analogy and a story sort of from growing up myself with being involved in sports my whole entire life. I mean, I played softball since I was 4, and started playing soccer later into, as I was growing up into middle school. And I remember as we got older and there were teams, and there was initiations into certain teams or groups for whatever, what have you. And I will just never, ever forget being like the new person, the underclassman, the whatever on a team, and the initiation factor of certain teams and the way that they did that. Some were really funny and they were just kind of cute little welcome to the club kind of business. And then there were things that got way out of hand. And I'll never forget thinking, why do people do that? And then the shocker to me was when I became an upperclassman, or I was associated with people that then became the upperclassmen, I couldn't get over how many of them wanted to do that or worse to the underclassmen. And I went, wait a minute, you're the one that hated that. and I thought that was bizarre to me, but truly it was an element of that fear-based of the shame that probably occurred to them at that moment. And they just decided to share it on and carry it on like a bully would do.
Wow. So we've touched on mass hysteria, fear. What are some tools? I know we touched on meditation and stuff like that, but just to round this out and give the positive light, one thing that I've seen, we touched on the COVID and what it's done to us and the fear that's just rampant and stuff like that. And I talked about everything slowing down. And one of the things that's everything slowing down has allowed me is I've stopped noticing as much fear, if that makes sense. And I started seeing people taking, like Liz, like you were talking about, finding new opportunities, and you, Sheila, with your energy meditations and stuff like that in your groups. I can tell people who aren't afraid because they're using this and finding new opportunities, whether they're stumbling upon them or whatever, and they're redirecting their energies away from being afraid and finding new opportunities and new ways to help people. And I know, like, I'll equate it to a prepper. If I feel like I'm in a situation where I have to be a doomsday prepper, I'm taking care of mine and I don't care about you. You take care of you, I'm going to take care of me and mine. But what I'm seeing is when I take care of myself and get, practice mindfulness in my life, is I start seeing all those other people out there who are in the middle of all this doing stuff for other people. I was taught that the only counteraction for fear is love, is to go out and show love. The guys I mentor, I tell them, if you're afraid, if you have a fear today, set it to the side for a minute and go find somebody to show love to. Go buy somebody a flower, take somebody to lunch, go visit a relative, go do something, show love to a random person. And without exception, they all come back and say, I'm not afraid of that anymore. Or at least for a little bit, that fear disappeared and dissipated. So James, I know you already discussed the meditation. What are some specifics that you practice to dispel fear in your life?
I would say probably the biggest thing that I do now is just assessing calculated risk It's to analyze the situation. I guess you could use just analysis as well. What is the worst possible thing that could happen? But I don't stop there. I also ask, what's the best possible thing that could happen? And so I don't, Liz, if I got in a ring with Mike Tyson, well, I'm not going to do that. Okay. Even though the reward would be so great, if I could actually knock that man out, I would be like king dog for a long time. People would talk about James Wade, but I assess that risk, and I know that the odds are too great, so I'm not going to take that risk. If I did see him, there would be a certain amount of fear that I'm just going to have to let go. I'm going to have to mitigate that just by turning the other way. But there are a lot of things in life that I've learned, and I haven't always been this way. I've had some opportunities, like I mentioned before, in my life that I really dropped the ball, literally. When I was a freshman in high school, I was a pretty good basketball player. So I went out for the freshman team, and it was a pretty good team, but I was up there in the top, couple, 2 or 3 players at least. And I had this fear of always getting in trouble, and I was shy and I was timid. And so my mom was late picking me up. This was before I was driving, of course. And because she was late, the coach had kind of gotten on to me a couple times. And because of that, I quit the basketball team. And I lied to my dad ever since, because I could not face him to let him know that really it was fear that caused me. I told him I got cut, and he found that unbelievable, which it was. I was pretty decent, but because of the fear, I missed the opportunity of playing basketball in my freshman year. And so I didn't always calculate the risk like I do now. Here I am, 42 years old, and as a freshman in high school, that experience still is with me. It still affects me when I think about it. It was kind of traumatizing to me. It was a self-inflicted trauma. And so now I try to assess I calculate the risk as much as possible. And if the odds are great, but the risk is worth it, if I think, even if I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail, I don't let fear stand in my way. I go ahead, because life is it's about the journey, right? Not the destination. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be a whole lot of things that I can learn along the way. And I just let perspective overall kind of be my guide. And I try to, fear still has its utility. It's there for a reason. If I'm not afraid of an oncoming diesel truck coming my way, chances are I'm not going to make it, right? So I need to have that fear. But I need to calculate my next steps as long as I have the chance. Now, if there's a bear in the woods, I don't have time to calculate. I got to run or get in the fetal position one way, or I'm going to be bear food. I'm going to be a snack. And that is what it is. But as long as I have a chance to really kind of think about things and analyze it, I try to calculate that risk, and I make my steps accordingly.
Right on. Liz, what tools do you use to combat fear?
Well, first, I give myself some good old endorphins, and I exercise a couple hours a day, do yoga, because when I take care of myself physically, I'm in the moment, and that grounds me. I would say that I probably need a little calculated risk assessment in my life, because I kind of have a tendency to go for it. And I believe in love, and my brother and I were having not an argument, but a discussion the other day. And he says to me, well, you always have been like that. You just follow your heart. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do. And I want to. And does it get stomped and hurt? And do I, lose sometimes? Yeah. But to me, I still feel like it's worth it. I use this quarantine as kind of a spiritual boot camp time. I was lucky enough my business did survive so far. And so, yeah, I felt a lot stronger. I don't want to say, like Joe, you were saying armor. I don't feel like it's armor, but I kind of envision like a protective bubble around myself that I just kind of have now. I still have to do my homework, but it feels pretty good. It feels like I'm safe from all of the chaos. Mm-hmm. So that's me.
That's awesome. What about you, Sheila?
Yeah, the protective bubble is absolutely my thing. Like I've been lucky enough to be able to do that probably all my life to an extent to create that space. But I've learned that balance component for me was to do some more physical work. Because I can be very introspective. So for me, I'm a big journaler, And so that's important to get my busy brain to stop and slow down, because it'll just overgo and overdo. So for me, it's been a balancing act. It's which creates that bubble. I'll do stretching, qigong, a lot of body awareness, paying attention to what my body's telling me I need to eat, when I need to drink more water, how to take care of myself, and then when I'm not really on board with it, I can feel that and I can tell. So, those kinds of things are what helps me keep pretty balanced. And then at least I can get an opportunity to feel whether I'm feeling fear, and then hopefully make a different choice if I need to.
Yeah. I think the biggest one for me, and I've probably really settled in on this one over the last 2, maybe 3 years, is silence. I'm always going, I'm always talking, I'm always busy. There's always music going. There's always a TV. There's always something. And there's really something it takes something for me to shut everything off, and sit. I had an old friend, a mentor, who was big about being able to sit with yourself, and I see a direct correlation between, if I'm scared, if I have fear in my life, and that could be, fear about losing a job, or fear about relationship, or fear about whatever, or fear on a global level, or whatever, any type of fear, whatever is present in my life, I tend to get busy and I don't have time to shut everything off. I'll get it later. And those are the times I need it most. And, but when I can shut everything down, what it boils down to, what I found is that I don't want to be by myself, because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about that stuff. And sometimes there's such gold in when I do that, when I shut it all off, shut it all down, and just sit there. It never lasts long. My mind runs like crazy for 5 or 6 minutes, but then minute 7 gets a little better. I think we lost James. Minute number 8 gets a little better. And then all of a sudden I can see the fear, whatever it is, for whatever it is, and then I'm okay. I can get up and I can go out and face whatever I need to face, so for the silence part of it's big for me. So yeah, I think we beat the hell out of the topic of fear tonight. And I want to thank you guys so much for doing this. I'm sorry if it was clunky and weird and all that kind of stuff. I'm learning how to be an interviewer, and I'm learning how to do this stuff, and I'm scared.
I thought it was great. I thought this conversation flowed very well. I think as far as Zoom conversations have went, this was one of the best I've been a part of, to be honest with you. I had a great time.
Wow. So, since you did that, you get to give the first shameless plug. What are you going to plug? What are you plugging here tonight, James?
Well, as always, I'm plugging the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast.
Yeah.
And the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast Network, which we've expanded. You might know something about that, Joe, with the CRUSHERCAST. If nobody has heard of that, it's a thing. It's a very good thing. Ordinary people, extraordinary lives, and they tell great stories. And we also have Raised on the Radio on the podcast network now. And check out the podcast. We talk about everything from a lot of physical fitness, being in shape, but everything else from, besides fitness and nutrition. We talk about mental health. We talk about business. Of course, a lot of our talk has been about COVID for the past, several weeks. Mm-hmm. And it's an important topic, though, and there's a lot of ways to address it. And I think a lot of people need to hear, some of the guests that we bring on, because we bring some very smart folks on, and people that are out there experiencing small business in the face of, the economic contraction and the stifling that they're going through. But yeah, check out the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, wherever. It's all over the place. And you can also check us out at the cepodcast.com.
Thank you, sir. What about you, Liz? What are you going to plug tonight? I know.
I've got my gym, CDY Fitness. And in case anybody wonders, the C stands for Camacho. Louis Camacho is my boxing coach. The Y stands for Chin Rong Yu, who is my martial arts instructor. So my two mentors on either side of me, the only reason I'm here. We've got a pool. We've got a boxing program. We've got heavy enough weights for anybody I've ever met. And it's just a really friendly place. I know probably 90% of the members' names, and everybody in there just feels like a family. So that's us.
Yeah. You got some warm yoga too, don't you?
Oh, we have infrared yoga. Yes, I forgot about that. We haven't started that back up yet because the room is small and we're keeping people distanced. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, if things keep going well, August, we'll start back with the infrared yoga. We have a sauna.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. What about you, Sheila?
Well, I have a couple of things going on that the easiest one is to start with is the heartspath.net is something that some other energy friends and I started going on about 3 years ago. And we've been just really blogging with that, which gets the creativity of journaling. And I have messages that come in to me that I kind of channel and share there. So for what little bits that people are interested in those brief things to read, they're not long, but they're a nice opportunity to reflect and kind of get a flavor of what's going on and what I'm talking about. But I most recently did start my own website to do some energy coaching and healing and guidance to work with folks. I've just recently been trained in a trauma healing modality for energy work as well. And that is on Sheila'sShamanShack.com. And Sheila is spelled Shiela. So it is the I before E, except after C. My mom said so. So you will only find me if you spell my name right.
Well, I'll get info from each and every one of you. I have most of you guys' info, but I'll just double check with you guys. And then when we throw this up on the video version, we'll get it all in there. And then I'll give links for all of you guys. And once again, I just want to thank you guys for taking part and making me feel like a champ here. So I'm not scared no more.
It was very comfortable and very relaxing. I appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, really awesome. Really awesome. Really nice to meet you guys too. So super topic.
And Sheila, I've never met anybody else who does Qigong. So
love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Exchange info so you can, I think Liz, I was telling Liz that I think that she would really enjoy some of your energy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks guys.
Thanks guys.
Thank you. See ya.
CRUSHERCAST.